if you ask me honestly, I think every PM should have very strong commercial mindset. Everyone.
Proven way that they will be able to distribute all this power without losing control and be able to make this quick decision.
But AI. And then there's a world that 1 PM can be doing that whole lot.
They then trusting the team to say, how do I win that segment?
Once you really become familiar with it, I think the next level is substance over form.
Welcome to the Product House, where friends nerd out about products. So this is another PM Spotlight episode, a journey into a real world of product management.
So each episode, we're sitting down with a different kind of PM from enterprise to startups to unpack the role and what it really looks like on the ground. And just a disclaimer before we get into it. Our views are those of our own and don't reflect our employers. Names and organizations mentioned in this episode may have been anonymized to protect privacy.
So today we actually have another special friend joining us, Kurt Yan.
Welcome, Kurt. Kurt is an experienced product leader, has cut his teeth working for some of the most product-centric corps in Australia, including Commonwealth Bank, VMware under the Pivotal Labs or Tanzu Labs brand, hence the t-shirt, and
Yes.
Cash Rewards. And most recently, he's been providing product consulting support to a number of AI startups. Kurt is also a passionate community builder. So he started a Gen AI FinTech and EdTech meetup community that's grown to over 1,300 people as well. So welcome, Kurt.
Guys, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, very excited to talk to Kurt.
We have a traditions called rapid fire, quick rapid fire questions with the goals to get to know everyone here a little bit more, especially Kurt. So
All right.
I know everyone is all at home at the moment. So what's the most you're using in your bag or on your desk right now? You think that things represent you?
I am at my own desk and shamefully there's stuff everywhere. So I'll just keep it safe and show the
Nice.
teapot. Yeah, it boils and it calms.
So if you guys can see this little thing, this little robot thing,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
very
you
cool.
can see it.
Very cool.
So it's basically it's a 3D printed you can call like a robot, I don't know, like little
Good.
persona or something, right? So this little thing it's basically a little symbol of one of the jobs I was done before in a startup. It's called a Flip Robot. So it's like a robotic startup company. I mean, they specialize in K-12 educational robotics. So while
Wow.
we're doing all the prototyping the design, me and my colleagues said, hey, because we have the 3D printer, we can print whatever we want. We're so like,
cute.
wouldn't mind to print something like this, and turned out to be a really good souvenir for myself to remember all the good days we were doing this work.
Wow, I love it. That's very cute.
Thank you for
Oh
sharing
my
that.
God, you need to maybe share the basic recipe, like the recipe of how to print that as well, because I actually have a 3D printer right next to me.
Oh wow, look at
Oh,
that.
oh,
So
very
I'm
nice.
very ready to print stuff as well. So if that's something that's a very cute kind of like a robot. Would love to see that.
Charlotte has her own version of a man cave.
100%. This is a
I was
100%.
going to say that as well.
What's on my desk represent me. My desk is also very messy as well, so I would definitely won't show you guys around. But I was mentioned to Kia. So yesterday I actually went to a yoga class with one of the previous guests yesterday. She actually gave each one after her yoga class a flower. And then she told me about the stories about this flower. I think it's called Pink Brush. It's all about resilience and be able to pushing through changes. It's such a beautiful story. So I feel like that kind of share the same spirits of me as well. I would like to think that way at least. All right, this one is about your work style. So are you a type of person is deep work in the silence alone, or you prefer to work in the team buzzing in the background kind of environment?
Definitely team. Yeah, I think I discovered that even when I was younger. I think I was just telling you about my basketball experience, right? I'm the communicator. I'm the point guard. I'm shouting. I'm trying to, and I felt like when I was in that environment, I thrive the most. It's really kind of not just getting myself the ideas coming out, but getting other people also criticizing or commenting on my ideas, or the whole brainstorming, the whole stuff that I just felt like I'm alive when I'm in that environment.
Yeah, Love that.
I think you do need some time for yourself. Definitely do solo thinking and everything. That's important, but just a broader kind of a way of working. Yeah, that's my preference.
Yeah.
Yeah, spot
No, I
on.
like it.
Completely agree with Kurt. I probably lean more towards the solo side, but yeah, left of center.
Yeah. I think I prefer working by myself, but I'm learning this lesson this year because I thought I wanted to be by living alone until I actually starting to work alone. I realized I need teams and friends. So, next one is, have you ever rage quit a tools, whatever tools it is, and gone back to spreadsheets?
Oh, all the time with product as well. For example, like with prioritization, a lot of things that we use different tools, right? Sometimes I
Yeah.
just go back to spreadsheet because it's too hard to configure some of the tools the way we
Mm.
want it to be, and I felt easier just to use spreadsheet to do a lot of the tracking.
Well, recently I actually did that with Jira. I configure everything on the Jira at the end when we actually have the
Oh
dev on
God,
board, and I just like, well, actually the dev proposed to say I think we are overkill a little bit about these all these things. I said okay, let's go back
yeah,
to spreadsheet.
Let's get started. So, Kurt,
Let's
thank you for making the time to chat again. Please tell our audience who is the real Kurt.
sure. You know how like every PM, because it's more like a PM sort of a platform.
Mm.
So every PM start from somewhere, or
Mm.
actually majority. I can't say everybody. From like a non-PM world. So my non-PM world is from commercial, specifically like in finance and banking. I did my undergrads and my masters in like accounting and finance, but turned out based on my this is actually based on data. This is based on my uni transcript. All my accounting subjects was either like a pass or credit. Hardly got any distinctions, and any of my non-accounting subjects, high distinctions, and all that. So I knew, like after I graduate, I'm not going to do any accounting work. So luckily, I got a role at Combank. So I
Yeah.
went, I mean, specifically in ComSec, doing trading. I was watching like that Wolf of Wall Street. I was really get inspired one day to become I guess, like a pretty wealthy investment banker. So I went there when I started a banking trading career. So yeah, so I was there for 8 and a bit years in ComSec. So I was doing both retail trading or investment and also a bit of
Wow.
a wholesale institutional trading stuff or institutional broking stuff as well. So I think through all those experiences really helped me to refine my stakeholder management. This is the commercial part of me, right? The commercial management, contract management. So I think what I brought into the PM world, it is that, which is the kind of a hot, like interesting hot topic right now is like should PMs, maybe we can dive into that stuff a bit later on. I have very strong views on that.
Well, I would love
Yeah,
to hear
so
that.
yeah, so I think that's kind of my T shape. A lot of financial fintech and sort of a background. I think what got me interested into getting into the PM world was actually by accident. So I was just towards my late stage, whatever, in my career in CBA, I was a little bored. I was looking for some new
Mm.
challenges or a new career path, and I stumbled upon a secondment opportunity there, just trying out like a commercial product management role, and I really loved it. Although that's not the digital product management work that we do most of us on these days, but I think that was my first exposure. I really love that kind of an end-to-end ownership of product responsibility and also just managing the P&L, like all of that. I really enjoyed that process. I
Actually,
think
can you help us just stop there and define a little bit more about the commercial PM and digital PM, the main
for
difference
sure,
around that?
for sure. The traditional commercial PM, they're actually been around for much longer than you can call the digital product management we currently doing. So their main responsibility is a couple of things. Number one, this is probably the most important. They're managing the P&L, the profit and loss. So basically,
Mm.
they are just think of how like people say us as the digital PMs and stuff or
Mini
product leaders.
CEO.
We are like mini CEO of the product, right? So
Yeah.
in the commercial PM world, you can say the similar stuff, but you actually the founder of the product. Does that make sense? Because
Mm.
CEO is just a job, right? Like if the product dies, the CEO can move on to another company or another product, whatever, doing another CEO role. But if a founder, if your product dies and stuff, you don't
It's
have this
part of
thing
your
anymore
identity.
because
Yeah.
right, you spend your own money on the thing. So hence why I think because you're responsible for the P&L, if the product is not performing, if it's losing money and everything, it's your responsibility. If you ask me honestly, I think every PM should have very strong commercial mindset. Everyone, like whether you're commercial or digital, but I know that's my ideal way of thinking. In reality, for various reasons and everything, this hasn't been the case. But that's my strong take on that commercial
Yeah.
and digital. The other big part of commercial PM's responsibility is also around managing a lot of like go to market. There is actually very strong product marketing elements within commercial PM world. So
Mm.
so traditionally with commercial PM, it's a bit of a commercial plus marketing type of role. A lot of them actually used to be either reporting to the marketing team managers or the head of marketing, or reporting to the C level. That's typically there was no function.
That's the title of the job
Yeah.
title, literally called commercial PM instead of general
No,
manager or something else.
they're not going to call commercial PM. They just call product managers. Yeah,
Okay.
but if you look at the JD, there are a couple of hints you can tell this is a commercial PM role. One is that there's heavy emphasis around the financial side, managing the
Mm,
profit and loss and the business performance of the product. The other aspect is if you look at it from a reporting perspective, if you see a role, it's just like a marketing communication or reporting to the marketing team or something. A lot of times it's probably a commercial PM
it's a
role.
commercial
Um,
PM. All right.
yeah.
Would you better
Oh,
just help the audience
uh,
also understand that was a really good description of commercial PM. Like the flip side of that, like in your experience outside of the banking world, like how do you describe product management?
non-commercial.
Okay. Yeah, so I think for the non-commercial PM, which is what like our world, the digital product management,
Mm,
there's so many you can call it versions and titles, and I'm sure you guys know, right? It can be both confusing to the candidates or people who work in the field, and also for the managers who's hiring for the fields. So there's the product managers, product owners, like some people owning the full responsibility, some people owning part of the responsibility. When I say full and a part, I'm mainly referring to aspects. One is you can call the strategic product management side, which is like product vision, product roadmap, like working with stakeholders, working with customers, doing research, product discovery, a lot of that, the front end of the product management work. The other one
mm,
is that you can call the back end, like you're cooking in the kitchen, doing the agile project delivery or project management, working the team, grind it out, right? Like really delivering the stuff on time. It's that, right? But
delivery
ideally, you want to do the
focus.
both of them, like both things. I mean, that I have seen a lot of organizations do that more and more, especially following Marty Kagan's this sort of a per operating model. But even if you do having both responsibilities, I still have seen those you can call this full stack PMs that they are not either responsible or they just haven't really got this very strong commercial mindset. And partially because they actually not asked to do that. A lot of companies that you can call probably the better practice, not the best practice, but the better practice ones, they're using OKRs, right?
Mm,
But if you have a team per team OKR, right? But your team per team's OKR, most of the times they are still really, I mean, as much as we say, hey, you know what? If your product like OKRs, if we want to align that with the company OKRs, which is more around the business metrics, but that
mm,
alignment, a lot of times they don't do a lot of validations. But even if they do, they're still only responsible for your own team's OKR. You're actually not, you can call ultimately responsible for the business OKRs. Where if we flip back to what I was saying earlier for the commercial PM, they straight away owning the actual business OKRs for the specific product or for your segment. I think there's also, this is what I'm saying to you guys, if we want to dive in deeper, there's also a bit of a thing about team topology, how you're really
yeah.
dividing the teams and stuff, which is a whole other topic that we can dive into if you guys
Yeah,
want.
but I'm
Yeah.
very interesting around like I guess the commercial PM's experience that you basically observing. What type of the business do you reckon have you experienced and seen? They have a little bit more kind of a commercial PM. Do you think
That's
they
right.
relate to the organization's size or type or industry, or is it
Yeah.
purely or is there's no such a rules behind that?
Yeah. Obviously, I haven't worked in many industries. There's just some industries. My most experienced industry is in banking or in financial services. I
Mm,
think in financial services, 100%. So if you look around, a lot of, if you on the Seek or LinkedIn, whatever, right, there actually are still a lot, Parity Consulting, I think they hire a lot of commercial PMs. I think the reason why in banking, there are a lot of commercial PM roles is because one is their product, generally speaking, more mature. So I'm not referring to like fintech startup or scale up. They probably don't, but I'm more
mm,
referring to like the big banks and like the big financial like insurance companies and type of organizations. The reason being the product is fairly mature. They don't really, or at least they think they don't need a lot of big innovation on digital side, but which they probably should or do now. But because of that, I think for them, managing the financial stability or the performance actually a bit more priority comparing to do a lot more
Mm,
digital innovations. That's
Mm,
just my personal
mm, mm.
assumptions of why that's the case.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, are we ready to go back to Kurt? Like, so
That's right.
far we heard about Kurt's well, accounting and finance backgrounds, and then which actually I studied that as well, by the way, and then going to commercial. And I know as a part
Yeah,
of the who Kurt is, there's so much more to tell. There was a kind of
for
a
sure.
consulting part of story. There's a startup part of stories, and there's also personal front of Kurt. Do you want to share a
Yeah.
little bit more? Who is Kurt with me?
For sure, for sure. Yes, I think that was my non-PM career. I think because I was really interested in this stuff, I
Mm.
couldn't land a permanent sort of a PM role in Combank. So I looked outside. I was actually approached by a company. They were doing a project launching like Apple Pay and Google Pay for the very first time in Australia. I was managing a small squad. It was a very heavily integration testing related project, but we were doing a lot of go-to-market activities. And I still remember the day when I was doing testing of Apple Pay on my iPhone, going to a 7-Eleven, 7 o'clock in the morning, and using one of the test cards. And I was paying with my phone. That was back in 2015, 16. That's when,
Wow.
like nobody else, everyone's still using the card, or they just tap and pay. I was using that. And the guy behind the counter was saying, "Hey, are you trying to do some sort of a scam, or this like what is this?" Like, it was very skeptical about mobile payment, which we're all very used to now. So I think for me, that was my first taste to true product management, and I was really thrilled about it. I think from there on, I've been working in startups, scale ups, like you said, consulting for quite a fair bit. So probably for the last 8, 9, probably I kind of like 9+ years, I've been doing this. I really enjoy product management. I felt like that whole career shift from commercial or all this like financial roles to product management. I have made the perfect choice. It really aligned well with my personality, my skill sets, a lot of the stuff.
Nice, nice. Maybe just to close the loop in the commercial conversation we had, how has the grounding in that commercial mindset set you up for success in kind of the last bit of time?
For sure, for sure. I think probably the biggest thing is, how like in our you can call like a product management best practices, we talk about this whole desirability, viability, feasibility, right? PMs or whatever, we should be really focused on the viability. But I think a lot of people, they don't truly really understand what is viable for the product. They think
Yeah.
they do, or they're trying to be, but I don't think they do until you really have the responsibility, if that makes sense, right?
Mm.
Actually, something I forgot to mention, I did that common thing for the commercial PM for about a year, but even prior to that, I was actually doing this sort of institutional account management role where I was actually responsible for my B2B clients, their, you can call profitability, the relationship and whatever, for about 3 to 4 years. So even
Mm.
that, there was very heavily commercial management, that focus, right? So I think when you have that true ownership, because if this goes bad, it directly impact your KPIs and everything. So you would have this sense of, hey, just like PMs, we do whatever has to be done in order to get the better customer user experience, to grow the product. I was doing the similar way, but from the angle of profitability, right? So I think for me, like whenever back then, obviously I wasn't leading a product team. I was just
Yeah.
managing it. So I was thinking about, hey, if we do this or if we do that, when I say do this, not developing features, I'm talking about, like there's operational initiatives, or should we like sell this product, or should we go in that marketing stuff? I was very heavily focused on, hey, how much is it going to cost? And then, like what is the potential margin there could be? Obviously, we're doing some assumption validation, but not like how we do product discovery, those type of assumption validations
Mm.
was probably a bit more internal. We talk to some B2B customers, but we still do that, right? But the
You have
focus
different
is
lever to
around,
pull in that situation, basically. You are making
yeah,
decisions, you have a roadmap, but you pull slightly different kind of
yeah.
lever.
And and also, if you think about how our digital product management people, we do, when we actually putting together business case, or trying to do stuff, right? Like when we do our own version of the discovery, we very much heavily focus on, hey, we want to validate the problem space, we're validating the solution space, trying to remove technical risk, we're trying to remove the the risk of solving the wrong problem, but always that there's one thing missing. That one thing, well, in my mind, is around, hey, if this is thing's gonna cost X amount of dollars, right? Just from a resourcing perspective and everything, is actually really even worth doing because there's many other solutions that cost less. That financial aspect. I've seen so many different teams and people doing that. They don't really talk about it or focus on that side, which actually it's really important. Even if you're solving the right problem, whatever, right? But if the margin's really thin, I think that's a problem because I think most of the companies where the tech, fintech, whatever tech companies, they really want to focus on growth. A user experience growth is top priority. But that margin side, I don't think there are enough business actually really pay either enough attention or prioritize on that type of stuff.
What's your assumption for the reason? Is that like because skill set gap, or is it because structure kind of constraints?
There's a couple of things. It's how we're talking about team topology, right? So when I'm talking about team topology here, I'm not just I mean just for the audience who don't know what team topology is, it's just it's sort of a different way how you can structure the product teams or even the organization in general,
Yes.
right? It's not just applied to the product teams. So if we want to go to that like one level higher at organizational level, I think a lot of tech companies, just from my observation, they consider that financial side of that responsibility sit within the finance team or the C levels. They don't really consider the product team should have ownership of that. They consider product team should have ownership of the customer experience, the ownership of growth, like a few other things, but they take that financial responsibility out of the product team. But in my mind, if we're talking about truly empowered product teams, they should also have the ownership and also accountability to the financial side as well. If that makes sense.
It's an interesting thought experiment, right? Which is, what if product managers had accountability, not just responsibility, but accountability of their own P&L? What type of mindset that drives in how they would pursue discovery, delivery, et cetera, right? So
I start to see that almost as a trend more and more. Again, I will be interested to see if that's what both Direct and Kia see. Is I think before there was so much different type of PMs, as you say. There's a product managers, the commercial product manager, go-to-market product manager, growth PMs, like PO. But at the moment, one thing I do see as a trend is a bit more full-stack product managers. When people hiring, at least a lot of stories that I heard in the market, I think we are transitioning towards a little bit, everyone just looking for a unicorn PM who can have a bit more commercial kind of like a skill set and technical skill set enhanced to drive. Is that kind of what you guys see as well, or?
Yeah, I think just on that topic, right? I also have I guess, fairly strong opinions on that, because especially with AI, nowadays everybody's talking about it. This is just my personal opinion. I felt like in the future, that's the direction. The reason being is that because AI can actually do a lot of, you can call the technical elements of the PM sort of work. I'm sure you guys been, experimenting, to trying different things like writing user stories, assisting with like a research synthesis, or even helping with A/B testing analysis. There's a lot of perk and analytics as well. So there's a lot of things that actually AI can do. So because of that, if previously, let's just say, because I've done growth PM as well, I've done a few different sort of roles, so I have some knowledge of different type of PMs, what we can do. But if we really aggregating those like jobs to be done within a PM, aggregating that, right, and labeling them, hey, this part of the work can be done by AI, and then like there's a world that one PM can be doing that whole lot, and well, obviously with some assistance with different AI agents and everything. And also, I think that would empower the PM to have this true full ownership of the product, just like what we were saying earlier, which I think that's the direction we're heading towards. But I think given the market maturity, I think we're still going to be at least a few years or even longer than that away to that point.
So I feel like there's almost like different chapter around Kurt's stories, the commercial side, consulting side, and startup side.
I was going to make the comment around it's a slippery slope when it comes to how much or how little accountability a PM has, short of actually being a CEO, right? And that context is the organization needs to be structured in a way that sets them up for success as well, right? Because in a lot of more traditional enterprises where they aren't product organizations, if you're looking for accountability when it comes to utilization, people utilization, right? In the ideal world, in the way a lot of product organizations are set up, their understanding is the product team is fully dedicated and working together, right? But if you're in an organization where they're not fully dedicated and they're chasing utilization, suddenly there's a whole army of people who behind your engineering organization or behind your UX organization trying to say, are you utilizing this person? Who do I charge it's their time to? Is it project? Is it BAU? Then suddenly just the admin will kill the product manager, right? So it's the system supports the success of the ways of working, which supports the success of the product, right? So I think it's just
No,
contextual.
100%. Like, I feel like the problem you are talking about is probably quite specific for consulting organization, also like big kind of financial organization. They all probably have the problem is there is a cross-functional team, but they also have almost like a craft-based team, business unit. So that's why utilization is a big thing around that. So when Ke was mentions the mini CEOs kind of a concept, to be honest, I'm actually writing a blog around the biggest difference between PMs and the business owner. I can't comment about CEO because I feel like CEO has such a different I guess, definitions almost in different size of organization. But I guess as a business owner, I do definitely feel like there is still a little bit gap because it simply because it depends on size of organization, of course, as well, which is part of the direction I really want to get to with Ke soon about the startup lens but in most of the mid-size to big size organization, they just have too much constraints to allow PM to be able to think as a business owner, because I feel like that's kind of the biggest difference between PMs and the business owner is even PM have the skill set, have the mindset, have the best intent, and trying to operate as the business owner. They don't have the power to get there.
That unfortunately, that's the frustration. You know how like I love Marty. I went to his event. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
So I love everything he trying to preach, but he's preaching like a relative ideal sort of a state. I think a lot of us, especially working in Australia, or at least for me, sometimes I do get frustrated because of that misalignment between even like the stuff I mentioned to you earlier. I think that was in the ideal kind of environment, or the ones actually really understand this from an organizational level and also support that, right? But I think probably among all the companies in Australia, I don't know the percentage, but I would assume only a very small percent of large or small companies really, for one, is they actually understand it, the stuff that we were talking about earlier, and also actually really agree with it. I think one fundamental reason, this is just my, the psychological side or whatever, just being curious, right? Can be a bit controversial, but I suspect it's because if you think about different level of power, right? The power in terms of just human beings, you can control the delivery, you can control the customer experience, you can control, like all the different things. The ultimate power, it is control the, you can call the financial performance, or that's the probably the highest level you can go. And typically for people, like different sort of levels in an organization, the higher level, like people sitting up on top, they like to control that. If you ask like my very honest answer, I think it is that. It is about who can have control of that power, and also the people, if they don't trust others to say, hey, you know what, this is a very big responsibility and whatever, right? I just don't trust you guys enough for whatever reason to let you, own that, then I think just it
One
comes
more
down to that.
defense now for the business owner currently on the top around why we don't want it to distribute the all the financial power to everyone in the organization. I think you are right. Number one is it is probably around power and then control sphere of influence where you are. But I think there's another really big part around it is about the communication cost around it. Because for a lot of very senior leader, they need to make decision. Part of their role is they have so many red tapes in their where they are. They need to make really quick decisions. At the moment, I feel like it seems like there's not a very, very proven way that they will be able to distribute all this power without losing control and be able to make this quick decision. It's all good old conversation.
Yeah,
at
funny
the
you
moment.
mention that. I mean, I like to challenge that. I mean, this is actually very good sort of a,
Please do.
PM, we're nerding it out and we're trying to really get to the, hopefully the truth of it. Where like my counter argument to that is it's actually very similar to a lot of the product side of the work that we currently do, right? Like business stakeholders, sometimes they actually even make decisions for us on the type of features or the product we should be building, right? Quick decisions. It's very, well, in a way, it's kind of a similar. I think to me, I think it's really because if they make very quick decisions on the business side, I would assume the same thing as we PMs always say, hey, there's assumptions in those decisions. The question is, have they actually done enough validation around that process? And also, I mean, when I say validations, I'm talking about the validation between that and also the correlation of whatever the perk work that the team need to do. That kind of a I think
Yeah.
they because they don't have the frontline knowledge as a PM or the team knowing the customers well enough and everything. So a lot of time they make those decisions based on, I guess, their assumptions, their experience, talking to some big B2B customers, and that's about it. So true, it is quicker, but then does that mean it's better or it's actually more
I
accurate?
agree with you, to be honest. That's actually what I see the biggest problems of every organization. And that's actually why I see product manager contribute the value. Basically, it's a problem to solve for product manager. It's the separation of the brain and hands. So how I always imagine it is most of the organization, the bigger it gets, the more complicated it gets. They always have people on the top doing this long-term planning, have control to the commercial, have control to the market, and they basically acting almost as the brands of the organizations. And we have all these people doing the work on the side and doing validations, talking to the customer, and then getting all this initiative to a market. That's the hands. And in a lot of organizations, how I see it, there's a huge gap between what the brands and the I see and what the hands and actually doing. And I think there's in Agile Australia, I think it's a 2010s Agile Australia, there's a lady called Esther Dabby, and she basically write the whole analogy around that. It's basically almost like the context overlap is almost like Esther Dabby diamond. They have very, very different small overlap between them. So what she basically say, all the product manager, product leaders, middle managers, and all this role of agile coaches, scrum master, regarding what the title it is, in her opinions, the biggest value they can helping the organization to do is to increasing the context between the head and the hands and get them together. So that's why I really agree with that. So I was not trying to defend, I was trying to defend a little bit for the people on the top. I guess the hard part around them is they don't have the context. They don't know what they don't know. They feel like they will be able to see the 5 year. They just want to be able to run. They don't have the trust to give all the power to the hands. So now it become our role essentially, and trying to increasing that overlap as well.
I've got a view which is, I think, complementary to what you just said, right? Which is how do you connect the head and the hand? And I think where it's truly effective is, I think, leadership providing direction based on what they know, and also being able to trust teams to choose the problem space that they tackle, right? So if leadership has the information to say, this is the customer segment based on our understanding of industry that we're going to focus and niche on, then they then trusting the team to say, how do I win that segment, right? As opposed to leadership thinks that there's a opportunity for us to pivot from our existing market and enter a new market, trusting the team to then decide, okay, what are the experiments we put in to define which of those segments, right? So it's the providing enough clarity to say this is the direction we're going, but also giving the teams enough constraint to say within this, we're confident, 80% confident in this constraint. You work in that constraint and define the problem that we need to solve, right?
But maybe I think what me and Kurt was saying that maybe we should also giving the hands there a little bit power to say this is a constraint. However, based on what you see, what you do on ground, you can challenging the consent. There is a channel to pushing that constraint
Yeah.
almost back up to basically challenging around that.
Yeah, I think that's something or I wouldn't say missing, but just from time to time, I guess that's missing. Just sort of team just take on whatever the senior leadership give to them. Hey, just work on it. But if it turns out that didn't hit the mark, the team sometimes the one to, I guess, to blame, right? Because but again, is the direction right? Like I don't think a lot of people really challenge that enough. I think that's just the reality.
in my opinion, this is a big value of the product management to do, is to validate that, challenging the why, and then and essentially trying to like
Yeah.
bridge the whole two world.
Yeah. So hence why I think just my last comment is coming back to my earlier point around this whole commercial PM, sort of thinking as a founder of the product or something, right? I know it can be frustrating for PMs if they truly think like that. They have that sort of a tool set to do that thinking, but at the same time, the environments don't support. But even that's the case, I would strongly advise PMs to think like that. So the reason being is that, let's just say, it's like there's two people, right? It's like there's a blind person. You don't know what you don't know, so you're just following whatever people tells you. The other person is like, but you are sort of constrained. Because although you are constrained, then you can maybe finding different sort of workarounds and ways to get to the other end. At least you can try. True, it's going to be a bit more frustrating experience, but I think it's that frustration is actually a good problem rather than a bad problem. You know what I mean?
Constraint brave
Yeah.
innovations, essentially, and sometimes challenging about why there is constraint, understand why there's a constraint is also really important as well.
Very important. Very important.
Well, we're actually already talking a lot about some of the best practice in the product management world as well. Again, this is just something that I experienced. I really enjoyed this conversation, by the way. It's just because I work with a lot of PMs. There's many different type of it, but generally there's some type of PMs essentially is let's just get the things done. Let's don't worry about this best practice. There's no such things as core value. Let's run it. If there's a problem, let's solve the problem. That type. And then it sounds like there's another type of PM, which again, from the conversation, I have a feeling both Kurt and Kia, both of you guys are a bit more kind of systematic. You guys have your own kind of toolkit. You guys have a kind of a guiding principle. You guys have what you strongly believe in, what like it works is a system way. So I'm curious about like, what's your guys' view about having a best practice? Is there any advantage of that to follow the best practice and using leverage this system way of thinking, or
Yeah.
not?
In my view, those sort of best practices or even frameworks and templates, whatever stuff, right? They're really good especially for people just stepping into product management or junior PMs. The reason being is that because they just haven't got that, that whole system process, whatever the mindset of how to do this, properly. But I think once you like with all those tools and framework and everything, right? I mean, it comes with practice. Once you really become more familiar with it, I think the next level is what I call substance over form. Just think about all those processes, all those whatever templates and stuff. They are the form, right? So what the form teaches you, just like when we read a book, the first time you read a book, yeah, you get it. You say, oh yeah, okay, this is it. But if you read the book 3, 4, 5 times, the same book, and you would have very different take, or even sometimes get like different aha moments and stuff, right? It's actually very similar. When you follow a process and whatever, initially you just follow it without too much thinking. But once you've done that enough times in that one organization, one product, or in various products, in my case, that's what happened to me. I think I'm kind of getting to the level where I felt like, you know what, hey, I really get what all these different processes trying to do, and I'm trying to summarize it, or trying to synthesize it, and just really extracting you can call the essence or whatever the real thing. And once you have that, then you can be a bit more flexible. And let's see here's a key point, because what I discovered is that different organizations, sometimes they might be suitable for different type of frameworks and stuff. And some organizations, actually, this is probably majority of the organizations, even with just the one framework, one tool, it might not actually work that well. It actually requires a bit of a customization or a blend of different things. But in order to achieve that fit, you need to be able to really understand the essence, or that sort of, hey, what are we really trying to do here? And being able to do that customization. But you can only get there once you actually knowing those sort of best practices or having those frameworks stuff, at the initial level. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Nice. I completely agree with you, right? I from the language I hear, Kurt's a big fan of the Shuhari kind of philosophy of kind of understanding the basics, mastering, and then breaking out of the frame of it. My only build on that is more of a nerdy one. Is like complexity theory, right? Which is there's no such thing as best practice in a novel environment, right? Best practice implies you've catered for every scenario that exists, and therefore you have a best way to do something. And in product, there is every situation is unique, right? No one's going to be targeting the same customers in the same environment with the same kind of market forces. So it's always what's good enough based on your experience. And I think where it's dangerous is where people use that as an excuse just to be sloppy. I think that's, and it's hard to tell when you join a new company and you're like looking around, like, why aren't you doing this? Is it because you've tried it and it didn't work from in the past, or is it we're just sloppy, right? And it's hard to tell. That's the
I would be interested to see what's your guys' experience around that, because this is actually one of my biggest struggle around that is how do you define it's just a bad practice like being applied, or is I'm actually being practical, I just want to get the problem done, or it is actually being sloppy. How do you guys tell?
Sometimes when you discover a new tool, you're thinking, I just got this new tool. I think this is gonna help me to fill that gap. But what I didn't realize is that because if you really don't really understand the purpose of the tool or don't know how to really use it well, just because you have the tool, it doesn't mean you can actually fully utilize it to achieve 100% potential. A lot of people, when they use the tool, they probably can only achieve like 50% or even less of what the true power of the tool, if that makes sense. And also the customizations and the stuff that we're just talking about. So hence why I think, but how to get to the other end, a lot of times from my past sort of experiences, that doing some courses or maybe have like a mentor or a coach or some people that would help on those specifics. I think having those rather than just a tool to work with, that's very helpful. And also experience, right? As you grow, you get more experience in this area. You can actually extract the essence and stuff. Maybe that can also help. So it's going to be a bit of a process from that point to the other.
Yeah, I really like that answer, because that's to be honest, I actually see them being done in both ways. Number one is definitely the one that when I do that early on in my career as well. I learn something new. I feel like my organization doesn't new. Let's try it out. And then I wanted to bring in some of this new tool, whatever tool, best practice or framework that I learned. Okay, regardless is it suitable for my organization or not. Let's just try it and see it. I definitely have that. But then at the same time, I also have the challenges especially when I'm moving to the startup world, is let's just start running before thinking about the practice. And I also find that to be dangerous in a way, because then towards the end of it, I will start to realize, now I actually don't know where things are. Is this feature actually in production? Is that in productions? Who is actually doing testing? And then what's the whole gate around this? And then I realize, actually that might be going to another tool, the other side of the spectrum is actually sloppy in that sense. I actually need to, it will be really good if at the beginning of it, we actually have some basic guide rail around the whole thing. I guess how to find that balance, and then even to have the skill set to have that conversations to judge that at the beginning. Yeah, that is definitely a challenge. Well, but since we're talking about the startup world, I think Kurt is also doing, you have already done a lot of consultancy to the startup world as well. What do you think is the biggest common mistake or easy to make mistake most of the startup world facing?
For sure. I think over the last probably a year or year and a half, I want to learn about, like AI and trying to hopefully one day become a true AI PM. Through that experience, what I realized is that it's actually not too different from even the software type of a startup, but I think it's actually even more dangerous, like more easier for them to wasting a lot of resources. This is me wearing the lean product manager head on. It's because with AI, I'm sure you guys sort of know this stuff, a fair bit. With AI product development, it can get very costly very quickly. Especially the ones actually building their own models, or nowadays, I think token prices gone down quite significantly, which is really good news, because I think maybe earlier this year or even last year was actually quite expensive. There's even more cost on that front. But even as a case, I think a lot of model trainings and stuff is still very costly. So hence why I think for those startups, if they have a particular assumption, once the assumption, is an idea or some sort of a, problem, whatever they want to tackle, they just use a blend of different models They say, hey, you know what? We need to have the best experience for the customers. So what they do is they have a selection of all the models. Customer can choose. They give the best experience to the customers. But that
Yeah.
actually add up the cost a lot more than it has to be, right? So I think it's about, true, you wanted the best customer experience for your customers, but also you need to be both opinionated on what is the most important thing you should be providing right now, and also just really do more validation around the problem you're trying to solve. Because I have seen too many AI startups, they have this syndrome, which is similar to the software startup as well. They felt like they have this hammer, this like this great tool AI or whatever the Gen AI stuff they currently have, and they're looking for nails to to hammer on. It's very common. It's very common. I spoke to a lot of startups. They have an idea of what type of product they want to build already. They say, hey, you know what? I want to do this like
Yeah.
this marketing AI thing, and this is kind of they envision on the solution. They're thinking, hey, this is going to be really well received by the VCs, and then they're going back to the marketing lens. Obviously, they have some SME knowledge, so they're trying to look for the problem they're trying to solve, right? So I think they think
Mm,
that's a easier or the shorter path, or it's the shortcut to get to success. Sometimes
mm,
that could be true, like if they're lucky and everything, but because that process you're taking a shortcut, a lot of times yeah, it just end up like you're wasting a lot of resources and money. Also, the other thing like I felt like because the AI world right now is iterating or advancing rapidly, this is actually probably one of the biggest difference between AI product development comparing to software product development. In the software world, like the technology side has been fairly stable for quite some time, right? So if you are running some sort of a
mm,
web app or mobile app startup, from a technology side, the risk is actually not as high. Whereas in AI product development, the technology risk is very high. My ask to those guys is that, hey, you know what? Is that really necessary to chase the latest model or to have the best performance for your customers? It's really come back to, like us as PMs, what we care about, is, hey, what is the true problem you're trying to solve? You don't really have to solve the problem 100%, right? Because at your stage, a startup, this is the thing, a lot of startup founders, they probably, some of them, they get it, some of them, they don't. Like all you have to do, you just get like the 80%. Just sort of your
mm.
core customers, you get like 80-90% of the problem solved as long as the experience it is significantly better than the existing solutions. Hence why funding the low hanging fruit is actually very important.
I think my takeaway from what you mentioned is there's just that balance between the old product management kind of three circles of viability, desirability, and feasibility, right? And a lot of people kind of over index on, hey, what's the latest model, or they over index on, hey, how are we going to get funding from a VC,
VC.
right? And it's kind of bringing back balance, is what I've heard, and saying what's good enough. What's good enough to get us to the next phase, right? So that was a really good tip.
Cole, I have a question around that specific one because there is also an argument. The reason why now, again, I'm not arguing for anyone. I'm just playing devil advocate. Now, one of the biggest benefit for the AI essentially is around the experiment cost. Apart from all the tokens and everything itself, to be the cost to validate the idea is so much smaller now. Actually, I do thinking that means that it give the, I guess, the startup a little bit more advantage. They can afford to build a solution very quickly to validate if the market actually like it, instead of like before they're doing a bunch of research about a particular customer segment before they even start doing anything. So from your experience around that, I do understanding why there is a problem that if you fully focus on the solution without thinking about the problem at all. But I guess just in the current, I guess, reality, what do you think is a best balance around how much time I should spending on, I guess, building, and that's a good amount of the times, and how much I should spending on research.
A really good question. I think from my observation, it's a just different sort of a startup, they have different practices, right? I think a lot of them, unfortunately, even with all those great prototyping tools and the experimentation tools that you mentioned earlier, we have, they don't use it. they still just like, you know what, hey, here is a, like an area we want to focus on. Even if they haven't done a lot of validation, they go pretty hard in terms of really investing, perfecting that solution. And then they take about 6 months, 8 months, or even longer to go to market, right? So I think, and unfortunately, this is actually before this in the software world, even that it doesn't have to be the way, to be honest. But I think a lot of the AI startups, they don't do that for whatever reason. I think this actually come back to, I think they haven't done, PM stuff before, especially in product management. I think they don't know what they don't know. So that's just the way how they operate. That's actually why sometimes I can help them a little bit in that regard. But there are also you mentioned earlier, those type of startups. It's like they use vibe coding or they're using all the prototyping tools to do the initial validation of the problem, whatever they're trying to validate. But as soon as they validate it, like they feel like pretty confident this is the direction they're going with and everything, they still, you can call like build it properly. I mean, it's probably not air code, because I think there's still a lot of controversials around, hey, can we actually use like vibe coded apps and stuff for production use or for commercial use? I think me personally, I have seen a lot of different voices on both sides. So I'm remaining neutral for the time being until we got more data. But I do have also some question marks around the viability. This is from the technical side, the technical feasibility, using vibe coded sort of apps and tools to be a very commercially viable type of a financial product, whatever the product you're going to use. So hence I can see a lot of them, they do that. They do the validate quick vibe coded stuff, but as soon as they felt like this is the way to go, they got a bit of money, they still, I guess you can say, build it out properly, like do the traditional way.
You are very, very close to the AI community, and you are also a PM, very close to the PM community. What would be kind of your advice giving to the PMs at the moment about leveraging, I guess, the AI tools?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I said this straight. I'm definitely not a expert in this area. I'm also just the same as a lot of people trying to learn, trying to, to sort of progress in that transition. Although I think I made a statement earlier about what I envision to be the future, but I try not to focus too much on that. Hey, you know what? This is the future PM or AI PM looks like, how I can fit that mode. I actually recently, for the last probably 6 months or so, I've been transitioning my thinking more around me and really break it down to the first principle level in terms of what I can bring to the table, what I'm passionate about, what I have, and then looking at, hey, where the market is heading in terms of business needs from a talent skill sets perspective, and how I can align that. Whether that's going to be product management, or maybe in the future, it's no longer going to call it product management. It could be product builder, could be whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter what the title,
Everyone's just
or even doesn't
builder.
matter the JD, right? It doesn't matter what it is. And I don't really want to spend too much time to think about that, because I felt like, because that's evolving, if I try to keep thinking about that, for me personally, it's a bit wasting of my time. So I focus on myself in terms of what skill sets can I improve to align the best with the business needs. So whatever that role is going to be in the future, I know I will have a good career prospect, or maybe I can become a startup guy or something if I have all the right skill sets. So that's kind of where I'm focused on right now.
Yeah, nice. It's both philosophical and practical in a way. Maybe just double clicking on the community building aspect of it, and because part of what Charlotte and I are both trying to do with Product Powers is bring together product managers. Like, tell us what motivates you to building your AI fintech edtech community.
I started this community around mid last year. It was actually purely out of my frustration not being able to fund a community for me to, to join, learn, collaborate on specifically the topic of Gen AI in fintech. So initially it was called Gen AI in fintech specifically. In the last couple of months, we broadened it to edtech because there's the bit of a demand. Also, I have some edtech past background. I can bring some speaker onto it. But coming back to the point earlier, it was purely out of my frustration. I was looking on Meetup, looking on different sort of areas. I couldn't find one. And yeah, exactly, right. So this very typical kind of a startup thing, the way how you start something. So one of my friends was saying, hey, as a joke, why don't you start yourself? So initially I didn't take it very seriously. I think there was just that one night I was just like, you know what? I don't use the effort, but I just like fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. So I think I like what I did was I just bought the 6 month subscription, whatever, on Meetup, and that's when I realized this is gonna get real. And I just started to trying to coordinate my first event. I think, as you guys know, the beginning part is always the hard part. I never done this sort of stuff before, Meetup or events and whatever did this thing.
Mm.
So initially it was difficult a little bit in terms of finding guest speakers and running all this stuff, getting people to get on. But I think I was able to do that fairly successfully now. I think the community I started last year to now we grow to about nearly 1,300 members. So it's growing really quickly. Like every
So
weeks, every
impressive.
month, I can
Yeah.
see 50, 100 new people joining. I think the reason why I think I kind of got something here is because a couple of things. I was trying to apply a bit of a product thinking to the way I was doing it. I was doing a bit of experimentation here and there. I was trying to also doing a bit of a hooked model from a customer or product growth perspective, because I run this very regularly, almost every fortnight at a set date, a set time. It's almost become hopefully a ritual for a lot of my loyal members and people. It's like, oh, hey, it's every fortnight, Tuesday night, 1 hour online. And also we do in person as well after long break. But I think that frequency, it helps. Because I think frequency get people into habit.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at around the market, I don't think for my area or this topic, there's enough content or enough local content out there for this. Especially when I say content, I don't mean just on YouTube and stuff, right? Because for me, it's a live event. People can ask questions, collaborate with the guest speakers and myself. I think that opportunity is actually quite valuable. This is based on my survey or based on
Mm.
my talking to my audience.
Yeah. It's that person
Yeah,
to person interaction that you don't get out of
100%.
video, right? Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, now the big question. So you are doing everything. You're doing commercial, you're doing some consulting. So what's next for Kurt?
So what I found about myself is I really love the community side. I'll definitely keep doing it. I think it gave me so many benefits, networking, learning, all this stuff, right? So it's something I'll definitely keep doing. But also around the startup area. I think because I think through all the consulting with startups and everything, what I discovered is that I really enjoy that vibe. In like my past startup history, I was actually working in a very successful one, 0 to 1 scaling within 3 years. And that's probably, as a PM, that's the highlight of my career. I'm just being honest with you. Just that sense of
Mm.
achievements and everything. True, it was hard work, but it just felt like it's worth it. Like all those good memories still vividly in my mind. So I think there's a chance I might sort of go back to the startup world. I'm actually working on some stuff right now on the side. So yeah, just yeah, and also I like to do a bit of a product coaching, mentoring as well, but that's probably just going to be on
Mm.
the side. I might not do that as a as like a professional career, but I really enjoy helping people. But they're just on the side. I think the startup stuff at some point probably going to be, yeah, like it could be one of my key focus moving forward.
Yeah, definitely excited to find out what's next, and maybe in the future we can invite you back for a follow-up interview.
Sure. Happy to. I'm having a lot
Yeah.
of fun
Nice.
talking to you guys. Yeah.
Well, all the good chat have a go to the end. We have a transition. I will let Kia to do the honor.
Yeah, the first part is if you could give one advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Actually, can I say two? Because I think both they're equally important, or at least to
Sure.
to me it is. So one is just really try to experiment. This is kind of a PM phrase, right? Fail fast,
Yeah.
fail often. So just I think in my early stage of my career, I was playing safe a little bit. So I just it's like a big chunk of my career. I was just very happy where I was, a bit of stagnated for a long period of time. I think that whole fail fast, fail often, trying to really discover what I truly passionate about. I wish I have discovered product management way earlier than I did. But again, like we all learn from that, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's one. The second one is also having a mentor or a coach sort of at the early stage. I think even back in CB, I had like a mentor, like a career mentors and stuff, that was helpful. But even when I got into the product world, I think what I didn't do from the get-go or at the early stage is to actually find a product coach. I found like that really helped me to give me better clarity, both on the directions, but more importantly, in terms of my skill sets, toolkit and everything, it's really helpful. Yeah.
Such a good advice.
If there's one question you're curious about in general that you'd like to ask our future guests, what would that be?
How do they or how did they decided on which path or which career they want to go, right? If I'm being super honest, although I'm kind of a mid point of my career, I don't have very clear direction around. It sounds like somebody you should be staying in the early stage of career, but I think with everything's been happening with AI, with everything, I hope it's not just me. I hope I represent a group of people, but just talking to me personally, I don't have a very clear path in the future. So just wondering if they did, or how did they decide that?
Thanks for the honesty there. I feel really resonate around that. That's one thing I find that is a part of the growing up, or part of being more senior as well. When you're junior, when you're in the organizations, I feel like career paths is so clear because you have your development conversation with your managers, people trying to tell you what your dream is, and you follow it through to be able to get it. At certain age, like a stage of our life, we start to trying to explore our own dreams. We realize our future and our career is in our hands, how we wanted to play it. And that's where a lot of uncertainty come from. So what you mentioned, that I feel like it's definitely not just you. It's definitely going to apply to most of the audience listening.
I was just reflecting on a personal note. I was like, I'm probably closer to retirement than I am to the start of my career. And, I'm hoping I could retire a little bit earlier than 65. Yeah, it's such a great question, right? It's all the uncertainty that the market, AI, all these things kind of bring. How do you be certain about what is right? So, thank you. We'll
start your own startup. It's always right, because then you have your fate in your hands.
Excited to ask.
Well, there's a downside of that. I'm sure we all know what that could be. So I need to get my wife's permission about, because like that could be a risky path I'm taking. But anyway, that's a different conversation I'll have to have domestically, but I'll leave it as that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
We'll definitely pass that question on. And then I guess, what do you need to unlearn to get to a better version of yourself?
This is going to be really good. This is actually, Kia, did you grow up here, or like where did you sort of originally?
I grew up here. I wasn't born in Australia, but I grew up here. Yeah.
Got it. You grew up here. I think me and Charlotte, we're probably very similar. I think Charlotte, you grew up in China, right? Yeah, same for me. This is not a sort of a critics on Chinese education system or anything, but I think there's a lot of the way the education system, or even the social norms that actually taught us as young Chinese back in China, it might have changed a little bit, but back then it was very much focused on following the instructions, following the order, following what teachers told you to be. And even the education system, it didn't really encourage a lot of creativity, all this thinking, the stuff that actually we taught here. I think if I have the opportunity to unlearn, I think I still have a little bit of that, but I think at least I know the other side. I try to get that part out of me. But I think if I can unlearn, I think that will be the part. Really, hey, sometimes, like in PM, we have a phrase. It's called what's called don't ask for permission, ask for
forgiveness.
Forgiveness, right? I think as Chinese, or at least the previous version of the Chinese live in China, that was almost unheard of. How can you, like ask for forgiveness, like not forgiving? We're not allowed to do that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things, just to learn that whole breaking the rules and trying to be innovative, trying to, sometimes get into trouble, obviously, hopefully not too much, to be able to grow. That's probably my biggest sort of
I love it. Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. I super resonate with that. That's kind of my a lifelong lessons at the moment. I try to break that kind of through.
It's hard.
Yeah. I must say it's not just unique to the China, even here in Australia as well. So thank you for sharing that. Hey Kurt, thank you again for making the time to spend time and nerd out with us. Your passion about kind of bringing people together really comes through, and you're just really articulate at kind of explaining your ideas as well. So really looking forward to kind of hearing about what next steps are, and inviting you back in the future as well.
Sounds good, guys. I'm having a lot of fun for Sunday morning. This is a great way to start a day. So I really appreciate this, guys.